Welcome everybody on the workshop titled "Are we label? Are you maybe not me us? Are you label ready?" My name is Magda Howest. I'm from Artist in Bloom.
I'm Tony Duckworth. I'm from PS, Poland and Eastern Europe.
And we are very happy that we can run this workshop. We had a plan to do it live, a real offline workshop at the beginning of April in Prague. Well, it didn't happen, as you all know. So we will try to somehow translate what we planned into this online version. Okay, hi new people. We are now in a group of 25 people at least at Zoom. Hi to people from Facebook. We are starting our presentation then. We will be here in a little. Still have the sun on my face, but I think we will somehow manage. Okay, so before we will start, I think we will say a few words about us for those who are seeing us for the first time. I run a company that is called Artist in Bloom, and we are dedicated to designing development tools for artists, as we say, with bold ideas. So for artists who want to really develop their professional career with bigger awareness and with more professional attitudes and with competences, we are there. We are here to support. And we do individual work. We work with artists individually on sessions in long-term processes for a few months to help them to achieve their goals. But we also are committed very much in education. So we do a lot of workshops, sharing knowledge and sharing tools about career development in the creative sector. And we also work a lot with cultural institutions, designing processes, designing educational programs, and doing also research, because as you know, there is a lot to know about the artists these days, what they need, how they are doing in many levels. So we are trying to deliver some data to then design better and more tailored solutions. And I'm playing today a more supportive role for Tony's knowledge, because he's a very experienced practitioner. So I'm trying to get his knowledge and structure a little bit to deliver you some insights and suggestions for your releasing challenges.
So I'm Tony Duckworth. I work for PS, as you can see on the screen. PS is one of the largest independent labels and distributors in the world, music distributors. Established quite a while ago, actually, originally in Belgium. We now have 14 offices around the world. So a lot of people see PS as the alternative, the independent alternative to major record labels, because our structure is very similar. We're just nicer people, we like to think. And I actually run the Poland and Eastern Europe office. So it's based in Warsaw. I'm the general manager. We sign local artists in Poland. We also distribute and release our international artists, and we cover 12 different territories, Czech being one of them, Slovakia, so a number of territories. We don't go as far as Russia, though, even though Russia is Eastern Europe, we don't get that far. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. We look after labels as well as our own record labels. So we have distribution deals with labels such as Sub Pop, Secretly Canadian, Mute, Bella Union, Heavenly, etc., working with their artists. And at the same time, we have our own record labels with editors, as you can see on the screen. Brodka, who's a very successful.
You were reading my question. I wanted to ask them a question.
Very successful Polish artist. And then a number of artists like Dead Can Dance and so on and so on. So ultimately, we offer label services to labels. We offer label services to artists, and we distribute labels as well as releasing our own artists via our own labels. Mm-hmm. And I think that sums it up.
Okay, cool. And yeah, we are very curious who you are. Some of the people who already appeared, we know, and it's so nice to see you here with us. But if you could, I need to get this little window here to see the whole chat. But if other people could write really briefly who you are you artists or managers, and where are you from? Because we see Czech folks. You offer these services to rock bands also. We have a little suggestion to leave these kind of questions at maybe the end of the workshop, because
we'll have a Q&A at the end, and then we'll be able to answer those sort of questions.
Yeah, it will be definitely better if you could write down the questions that will appear during the workshop, and we will have the whole Q&A section. So don't worry, we will get back to this question. Throw this once again at the end of the workshop, please. And if you could write down who you are and where are you from, what are you doing? Just briefly, 2 words, it would be cool. Are you artists, managers, artist Czech Republic?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Only one artist?
I'm a manager.
Pianist, Poland. Hi, Natalia from Poland. Artist, Norway.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Natalia is smiling. Artist, Czech Republic. Producer and vocalist, Athens, Greece. Hello. The Radical Panda, rock band from Cyprus. This is, we were admiring the name of the band.
Okay.
Composer, pianist, and guitarist from Czech Republic. Contemporary, classical, combining piano. Thank you for this description. Artist from Austria, living in Prague. Czech Republic, artist, guitarist, producer, Czech Republic. Okay. Band, Czech Republic.
Sacred Professors.
Prague/Italy. Musician, Judy.
Oh, we've seen Judy live, I think. Have we not?
Yeah, we've seen you on Last Novel Prague, right?
Yeah. I think so.
Hello, nice to see you again. Band from Prague. Okay, so most of you are from Czech Republic, but
and most of you are artists.
Yeah, that's good, because I think we designed this workshop mostly for artists. Mm-hmm. So great. Okay, so from time to time we will throw some quick questions to you, and so during the workshop we can use the chat, and like we said, please write down, remember your more specific and more developed questions, and we will get back to all of this at the end of the workshop. Okay, so quick plan. We will check the release options. Tony is already doing some notes. We will go through some releasing options, because we thought that if we want to help you to answer this question, if you're label ready, it's good to also know what you have, what are in general options of for releasing your music. So we will go through also self-release, not only through label option. and we will help you also to show you or put your attention in some aspects that are quite important for you to assess your potential for yourself and for decision-making process. Tony will tell you some insight stories from how from label environment, and we will try to do a little brainstorming about the main question here. So please be concentrated on what we are talking about, because all the tips giving you the really complex answer for this main question of the workshop, are you label ready, will be giving you step by step through the presentation. So yeah,
it's definitely important to have, you know, at the right times to have your interaction, for sure, because some of this will be where we explain, where, for instance, I might explain that self-releasing and independence of majors. There will be, there has to be an element of generalizing about what those services are. But each of those services will offer you something different within. So you certainly can do different deals with any of those three. So, but we may just, you know, generalize a little bit, because otherwise we, you know, explaining the ins and outs of every type of deal that you could possibly do with all of the three different options would be, we probably would be here till next week. So, but where you'll find out more about that, and the more of the ins and outs of that is by interacting at a later stage.
Mm-hmm. So we have, first of all, a little, I don't know how to call it, it's not a question, or maybe it's a question. So what are the release options? This is the question for the beginning. And we would like to check what is your own awareness of the topic at this point. So if you could now imagine that this scale shows your awareness of the topic, what are your release options? And 1 is, I know a little about the releasing options on my market, and 10, I know everything. I know the topic inside out. I know all the labels. I know all the paths and possibilities. This is 10. So where do you feel with this awareness of the matter? Where are you now? Please write us on the chat, because we would like to see what can we. Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
No, woo. It's 1, 1, 4. Mm-hmm. Okay. 2. Every answer is okay. So please don't feel intimidated. We will be developing your awareness, definitely.
I love you, honey bunny, are a number 8.
4, 6.5. I like this precision. 5, 7, 3. Between 3 and 4, 7.
Okay, good.
Okay. So we will be from time to time on this workshop checking how it is going after some next slides. So we have quite, you know, big range. Yeah. So let's then check some release options to help you to jump a little bit on the scale. We will show you few case studies to help you understand the release options and differences between it based on some cases, stories, and people we also worked with. We think it's always easier to talk about real situation. So we will start from one of my favorite artists. This is Bowska. And she will be a perfect and a beautiful example of self-release option. So Bowska doesn't have any label deal. She is working as her own label. And this is on the left, you have the cover of her last album, which is a 4th album. And oh, I'm very sorry, but the name of the artist is a bit eaten by the screen. But her name is Bobska. You can check her on online. This is the picture from her last video called Uncle G. And I liked that picture because she looks here that she has everything in her hands. Maybe the computer is not very updated, but this is the position that she's also having in her career. And everything started. She has quite interesting story because she's a graphic designer as her professional. If we're talking about her professional background, and when she was on her studies in Academy of Fine Arts, she was exploring many different media. And in one of her projects, she was doing the storytelling through song performance, also visual art, and she was discovering that the music slowly, like trying all this and mixing all this media, that music is something that she really wants to do. And she, by beautiful coincidences, she found her music producer that she's working with now, and she produced with him her first few songs. And also she was very skilled, so she could also think about bigger strategy around this this production. And she had a dream, and then she had an idea who she would like to work with, and there was one independent label that she was super interested to have a deal with them. And she brought the material with her first produced songs. It was beautifully packaged because she's really strong in thinking about the whole visual package. So everything was really promising. And the label said no, that they are not interested. That was a moment of discomfort because she didn't have any other interest, any other options. She was interested only with this label. She thought that everything is matching there. So so after going through this period, she decided, okay, so I'm doing it by myself. And she signed a deal with a digital distributor, physical distributor. She invested her own money to release the album by herself. And that was a very interesting moment, interesting point. That here on the left, this is the first album, that in a moment when she already signed the deals and the album was being physically produced, the song was used in a Polish series with very popular stars. So the music just went out very quickly. And the label came back, seeing that, you know, the artist is doing very well in building their profile, and everything is so smart, and they just discovered that there is a really big potential. So they came back to her with offer back again. But she discovered that she's doing quite well by her own, and making the decision and thinking about the whole strategy about the album, and the offer was not attractive anymore. So that was the shift point when her dream label became at the end not a great solution for this situation. And what is very interesting for me, that after 4 albums and really developing in an interesting way her career, now, like I mentioned, she's after her 4th album, she's still self-releasing. She has, of course, deals with distributors, and she managed to build a team, and she's really doing well on the market. She is Esther, her own label, and she's doing everything by herself. So nothing changed here. Any proposition from the label didn't become enough interesting to beat this system that she built. Other option with from self-release, maybe something Johnny here to add.
So Sebastian Zawadzki is he's a neoclassical pianist, but in actual fact he's classically trained. He's Polish, but he lives in Denmark now, and he works classically. So within the classical context within orchestras or within quartets and etc., writing classical music or playing Bach or whatever it might be. He also at the same time does a kind of very early Nils Frahm kind of neoclassical music. He does it on his own. He records on his own. He finances everything by himself. He doesn't release anything physically. He only does what he does digitally. So he has a deal with a DSP. He originally had a deal with a company called AWAL, and then he did one album with PS, which is we have a similar thing to AWAL, which is called Access. And so he did one record with us on Access. Interestingly, he did quite well with that record, but then went back to AWAL and did even better with the next record. So, which was a bit of annoying. But he ultimately, where he gets his exposure from is effectively mood playlists on Spotify, and they're not regional mood playlists. These are big international playlists that he's actually getting streams from. And now I had a conversation with him not so long ago, and now he actually makes enough money to live off just from his streaming revenues. So anything else that he does outside of what he does as a neoclassical, his releases, is on top of is profit on top of that for him as well. So he's very keen on what he does, very adamant that this is the path that he wants to go on. I don't see either of Sebastian, possibly in the future maybe, but someone like Bofska or slightly Sebastian, I don't see them actually saying, in a month's time or when the next record is out, they go, I want to sign to a record label. I think they will continue to do what they're doing because they're very good at what they're doing. But the difference between...
Maybe I will show the next slide. That will be easier to also show you this. Sorry, I'm not good with the cursor. So just to summarize this option, we did a little process that you always have, or parts or phases that you always have with releasing your music. So you have to take care about the production. Then you have the strategy for the album. What do you want to achieve within this album? What will be the promo idea, the whole visual identification, etc., etc. You have the distribution, so all the deals and details, and of course marketing promotion. So when we are talking about self-release, you can see that basically the whole process is taken by the artist as a responsibility. And we talked about Bofska and Sebastian. They're like doing and investing in production by themselves. And I like here also the case of Bofska, because she's really great in building the strategy for the album. You can see that it's a like transmedia storytelling. She has every detail, every layer, wherever she appears and on what kind of media, everything is very coherent. So she's really great in that. And she has partners that in period of time in these 4 albums were changing. because we will get to this point that she changed the digital distributor. She also, I don't remember now if she changed the physical distribution. No. So only the digital distributor changed. So they are taking care, the partners are taking care about the distribution, but still all the marketing and promotion accent is put on her work and work of her team, right? So
but the difference between Bosca and Sebastian is that Bosca is releasing as though she is a record label. Every stage of what she does is done in the same way as a record label would be doing it. Sebastian, on the other hand, is very much that it doesn't really get to the marketing and promotion side of things. It kind of stops with the digital distributor, and he's not so interested in the, you know, he might do sponsored posts on Facebook and, you know, etc., but the promotion, as in whether it's radio promotion or whether it's, you know, reviews in media and etc., it's not so much of an area that he's focused on. Whereas with Bosca, it is a definite that part of the process is as important as the, you know, the production of the record. It's all part of the strategy. Whereas with Sebastian, it's very much that I will make the best record I can, and I'll give it to my digital distributor, and they will then pitch for me to DSPs, the digital service providers like Spotify and etc., and that's where I get my exposure. I get my exposure as though the streaming services are radio stations.
So I have a question about Sebastian. How is he working on strategy for the album? Is he, you know, putting his energy to this, like, for example, Bosca?
I think Sebastian has a vision about what he does. He has a series of, you know, he makes records that are in a series called Piano Sessions. So they're of the same style. And then he will make what is outside of that, or his studio albums. And I think the studio albums have concept maybe is the wrong word, but there is a concept to those records that he makes. But a strategy, as a marketing strategy or a promotion strategy, there isn't out there.
So you can see that this is the self-release option has also like sub options. You have, you know, around these elements you can really build your own path. We have here two examples that are somehow in the middle. There is a guy that you probably well know. He's an Estonian artist, Nõpp. What mean Nõpp? You told me today. A button.
It means button in Estonian.
Okay. So Mr. Button and Cigarettes After Sex. Those two guys are really interesting examples because they were at the beginning doing everything by themselves. Nõpp is an interesting example. He was releasing music by himself. He built a really, really great audience, and his statistics on Spotify and other streaming services were really, really awesome. So he had quite good strategy thinking potential here. And he was developing everything by himself, and it looked so good and was so attractive that he got an offer from Sony, and he was for some time signed to Sony, and quite maybe not similar, but in a maybe similar mode. The stories from Cigarettes After Sex, right? They were playing a lot of gigs.
Cigarettes After Sex actually started. They record themselves, and they started off recording themselves. Interestingly, they started off almost exclusively by posting things on YouTube. And they became ginormous on YouTube. I mean, huge, absolutely huge. They could do, on the back of that, they could do a lot of shows, and they were selling a lot of tickets in America. So essentially, when they then decided they needed something to take them that step further. Actually, the main guy in the band is off the screen. Greg is over here somewhere.
Oops, yeah, some screen.
So they
problems.
you know, then they decided, well, actually, we need to go a little bit further. You know, we can't constantly do, you know, posting things on YouTube. They made an EP on their own, which they released. I think some of you will know it had an REO Speedwagon cover on the EP. And then they started looking at record labels. Lots of labels chased them. They were in a position, they were so big, they were in a position that there were a lot of labels that were interested in them. It actually says Cigarettes After Sex PS, but they're not actually signed to PS. They're signed to a label called Partisan. Now, we did want to sign them, but unfortunately they signed to Partisan because Partisan is an American label. Obviously their biggest territory is America. PS's biggest territory isn't America. We're very big in Europe. Partisan aren't so big in Europe, but luckily PS distributes Partisan in Europe. So Partisan signed the band, and we work Cigarettes After Sex for Partisan throughout Europe in the way that it would be signed to us, but they're not actually signed to us. So there were a number of, you know, it just shows you that doing something on your own, and even doing something on your own that is actually seems quite naive. It's almost, you know, like I'll just put everything on YouTube. I won't earn any money on it, but I'll just put everything on YouTube. Well, in actual fact, in the long run, that has meant that they have earned a lot of money from it, which isn't always the be all and end all, but they've become very successful because of that and the way that they built a fan base.
So you have some tips here for our later question when you are label ready.
I wouldn't do that now though. In my opinion, it probably, if you were American, it probably could work, but I'm not so sure it would work in a European base.
So when was the time? Because it's quite interesting because the industry is changing so quickly. So when the putting things on YouTube was working? It was a couple of years ago.
Well, no, longer. It would have been, I don't know, 6 years ago maybe for them, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm the presentation is eating some letters from the names. I think this is again your case study.
Yes, Ten Snow. Very dear to my heart. I mean, the band
because maybe I will do one introduction, because now we are smoothly getting into real label release, right? We are now with a proper label release.
So Ten Snow are a band that they're a Polish act. We have now released 2 records by them. Ten Snow Me was the first record, and this is Ten Snow is the second record. The artist that is really, really close to my heart. I think that I can tell you the story of how we came about the band. We often work with people that we trust and we have a relationship with already. Might be an agent, it might be a guy who's booking a band, it might be a guy who's managing a band. This particular guy came to us with Ten Snow, and at the time he wasn't managing them, but he wanted to manage them, and he was like, you should listen to this, you'll love it. And sure enough, there was actually no record recorded at that time. It was just a live session in a place called Yazdów, which is a series of wooden huts in a forest in the middle of Warsaw, and it's like has become kind of a cultural center within the city where a lot of artists go and they work together, etc., etc. And this film was beautiful. The music was beautiful. The film was beautiful. But interestingly, I still wasn't quite sure about this band. I was still like, well, I'm not too sure. It's now what you would call chamber pop, but there was no chamber pop at the time, so it was a bit difficult to understand at first. But then I actually went to see the band live, and I saw them at we have a festival every year in Poland, not this year unfortunately, but we have a festival.
Probably know this festival.
And it's called Spring Break, and they played at Spring Break, and I sat next to the guy who then had started managing them, and I sat next to him at the show. I drove him to Poznan from Warsaw. We went together. We were good mates, so when we went to the show, we sat next to each other. And I was blown away by the show. Seriously, I was blown away. And I stood up at the end of the show. I wanted to go to another show, but I said to him, don't sign this band to anybody else. We're signing this band. And I left. And then the next day he called me and said, oh, Warner want to sign them and Agora want to sign them. Everybody wanted to sign them after this Spring Break show. But eventually they came to us and we signed them. They did everything themselves. They're totally self-sufficient.
What does it mean, everything? Because maybe it's not clear.
From an art point of view, from a creative, every side of the creative, every side of the music. An interesting story is that you might think that record labels. You might think that the record labels know what their artists are recording. The second album, Tenskno, I didn't hear anything. I heard nothing at all. There were no demos. Even if I asked management or I asked Asher for music, it was like, no, you'll only hear it when it's finished. So, and we were fine with that. We trusted her to make a beautiful record, and sure enough, she made an absolutely stunning record. So not always do record labels what we call A&R artists. Some artists don't need A&Ring, some just, they know how to make their records.
So if we could, again, help people to see this process once again, when you are in a label, sometimes the label is interfering the production process, but sometimes the artist is independent in this, right? I
would say
music.
that PS never interferes. We never interfere in what the art, I can't speak for other record labels. We get involved in the production aspect of a record.
It's like, it's not the good word, interfere, engaging, right?
Yeah, we're involved in the production of a record and helping an artist make a record if that artist asks us, they tell us that they need that help. If not, I think actually pretty much all our Polish artists that are signed to us are artists that will have no problems making their own records. But
how about money? Because we're talking about artistic level. How about the engagement, financial engagement in this phase, first phase production?
It depends on what deal the band has signed, but usually there's an advance for a record, and they can use that advance to fund recording. So it's it may be, for instance, with Tenskno, that on the first record they came to us with a finished record. We still gave them a small advance to help them with videos and other things, but we didn't need to advance them any money for recording, because obviously they had already recorded it with their own money. And on the second record, it depends how your deal is structured. Usually, if we sign bands for more than one record, and so then there will be an advance. I'm not giving too much away, but then there will be an advance based on what an amount of money based on what the first record sold that will be given as an advance for the second record. And then that money can be again used to fund recording or whatever the artist chooses to use that money for, as long as they don't go and buy houses with it.
And you as a label then engage in designing the campaign with the artist. You create together the strategy for the album, right? And you are also in this process.
I think it's very important when you're the label. It's very important to be your artist will deliver something to you, and then what you begin to do is work with that artist to mold a campaign. It's important to tell us, for that artist to be telling a story about that music. Some artists will say, yeah, but the music speaks for itself. Well, it doesn't. Never does. Music, doesn't speak for itself. Music is great. Some music is good and some music is, bad. Some of it is great. But even if you have the greatest record that has ever been made, there still has to be a story. For me, Clash the Clash is the greatest record ever made. But there's still, did they deliver it to a record label and say it's the greatest record ever made? I don't need to tell you anything else. No, there obviously is a campaign behind that record. There's a strategy behind that record, and every artist has to ultimately do the same thing. So it's important then to sit down, design a campaign with the artist, and then once you've designed that, you've decided what the stories are and where you should be going with what media, when, and etc. You've strategized the whole thing. That's then when it goes to, it begins to be released using that template that you've created.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we hope that you can now, thanks to these examples and thanks to this infographic, you can understand what are the differences, and how also I don't know the English word, like the options, sub options. Agnes Obel. It's not Gnes Obel. It's Agnes Obel. Sorry for again eating the name of the artist. This is also an interesting case because this, in fact, was an artist that was released in independent label in PS, but she switched after a couple of years in major. So
no, more than a couple of years, but she did 3 albums for PS, for Play It Again Sam. Actually, she was signed to our own label, Play It Again Sam. She was signed by a guy called Stefan in Germany. Agnes is Danish, lives in Berlin now. And she was signed, she'd made most of the first record, Philharmonics, already. And I think Stefan obviously heard about the act, and then we signed the act. Agnes was our biggest artist. And she felt after the 3rd record, I think that there needed to be a change, and she went to, she's now signed to Universal, but to the classical division, Deutsche Grammophon, via them. But I think the process with Agnes is very similar, that she makes her own records. She has a studio, she was making her own records. She's very quite a perfectionist with what she does, and can be left alone to get on with making records. Has some great creative ideas, etc. And then we strategize. She comes then with the record, and her management, Richard Jones, comes with the record, and then you strategize and you do the same things. The interesting thing with Agnes is that I guess this is a kind of lesson that, not for Agnes, not for Richard Jones, they're very good at what they do, but I think that you can be an artist at an independent label, even like PS, and be a very big artist. You're our biggest act, but even the biggest act at Pias, when that artist leaves to go to a major, it could be anybody. It may not be Agnes, it could be any artist at all. But then you leave the indie, and you're the biggest fish in the indie. You can then go to a major and not be the biggest fish, because, you know, there might be a number of other artists, the Billie Eilish, Taylor Swift, or whatever. Okay, Agnes, or an alternative artist coming from an alternative independent label is a different, you're working in a different area. So you could be the biggest alternative artist on, you know, Universal, but then I think it can be difficult making that transition.
Yeah.
Although I think that may well be the right transition for a lot of artists, that they may not be as strongly represented, or they may be as strongly represented. That's an artist's decision where you need to move on at whatever point you need to move on.
Mm-hmm. This is a very interesting aspect, and if we could go back to this our little infographic, is there any change if we, for example, compare this process between independent label and major label? Do you see and can indicate any differences in work?
The difference between a major and an indie. I said earlier, we're nice people.
No, okay.
No, I think that I think maybe, you know, people who work
technically, because I know that the Agnes Obel, that's why we chose her, because she was here and there. So you can easily see that she was taken care in a different way, and she her status was a bit different. When you're in a major, you, for example, become one of the artists that is taken care about by one team. So you become like a fish in a big sea, right?
I think I can speak for Pias, and I think Pias is a family of people who do jobs.
Quite nice.
That they do jobs that they love. That we do what we do because it's our first nature. It's, you know, for instance, I've never done anything else. Right from the age of 17, I've always worked in the music industry. So that's 39 years ago. I started working in the music industry, and the reason why I started working in the music industry is because I'd listened to the Clash, White Riot, and I believed it was my destiny to end up doing what I'm doing. So, and I think there's a number of people in independent, there may be some in major record labels that have got can tell the same stories, but I think that majority of people in independent music labels, they do what they do because they love the music. It's all about the music. And I think this is there's a difference. That's the major difference. It's Pias is I don't want to blow the trumpet of Pias too much, and I think there are other independent labels that, you know, Beggars Banquet would say the same thing. But we're a family of people that want to do the best thing for other people who've joined our family, and we see that our artists are also part of the Pias family. And I think it's important that those artists, you know, we all our offices know our bands personally. We all know editors, and we all know, you know, so we talk to them, we meet them, and, you know, etc., etc. So it's, you know, there's personal relationships with those artists that are also professional relationships, and we think that that's the most important thing.
But before because we will in a moment ask you again a question about your awareness after this case study analysis. But before that, I will ask you, Tony, if we are talking about majors, this process change?
I would say that the process of how you put together a standard release is very similar.
Yeah,
I would say it's very similar, but I would also say that you have to remember that the music industry started from one point, and it's moved along a string, doing the same thing for quite a while, even though our medium where people access music is different, but our structures are very the same. And it's no different that you would probably walk into a Universal or a Warner office in Czech or in Poland, and they would be doing a very similar thing to the thing that they're doing in the UK or France, for instance. And I think that's just how the industry works.
Yeah. So guys, so this is the a little theory and examples also about what the releasing options are. So we are coming back to the questions from the beginning to check how are we doing here now. So if you could now rate your awareness on releasing options, what numbers would you give now?
Or maybe rather than, because we probably don't know what numbers you put before. So maybe, can you say, are you more aware or just as aware as you were before?
2 points more aware or -1. Like if you could write down on chat.
I expect I Love You, Honey Bunny to now say 10. There's the challenge.
+2, yeah. From 1 to 4 or 5, cool. That's really good. +2. Oh, you're making us feel really happy. 1 point more. +2.
What's that? Well, I didn't understand. Okay, yeah. You understand.
9 and 5, but I guess I have known more than I.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Than I said before, and this is interesting because this is also what is this game about, to make you more aware of what you already know. Yeah. 6, yeah. Thank you. Thank you too. Haha. Okay. Same here. +1, +1.5. Okay. So we are progressing. That's very good information. So let's move on then. Now a little tools, because we are getting closer to helping you to answer this question, the main question of the workshop. What are your label ready? So we need to answer or just put some light on this question. What does it mean, in fact, being a label ready? So we have 2 little, let's say, exercises. First one is artist asset checklist. This is one of the tools that we are working on in Artists in Bloom. We are trying to transfer practical knowledge to some processes and helpful exercises or structures to help artists to be to put their knowledge and experiences in some kind of order to have better possibilities to manage these resources. So this is one of the structure that we created for a different reason. It was more to assess export potential, and that was an exercise to look at the most important aspects that are important in export, to help artists assess where they are right now. But we decided with Tony to put it also because that also works for labels. Unfortunately, it is in Polish, so sorry for that. So I will guide you a little bit with this, but as you are from Czech, maybe it will be still quite clear. So in the middle, you have 3 things. You have motivation, you have artist identity, and you have also unique value proposition. Those are 3 things that are the most, the closest things, aspects within the artists. So no one will help you with this. You have to figure it out by yourself. You have to know the answers on these 3 topics. So why are you doing it? For every label, it will be very important to work with very conscious partners. So labels like to work with people who know who they are, why they are doing it, what is their goal. So it's really worth going through this. It's very important for you to answer the question also, what is very unique about yourself? What is the difference between if you are playing some kind of genre and you are in some kind of environment, musical environment, what is different about you? And you have to know it, and you have to have it very clear and named and phrased in a easy way to, because it's part of your awareness. And also artist identity, it's you know, how you are on the scene when you're performing, how you are in live gigs, what you know, what is your music tastes, what are your music dreams, what are your inspirations, who you are as an artist. And the more you know, and it's also about the look, about the visual performance and presence, it's also about your charisma. So what is the vibe, what are the emotions? Those are the things that no one will create at the end for you. You have to explore it, you have to be curious, you have to look for it, and you have to like put a lot of energy, like, but this vibrant organic energy, it has to be real. And the next ring, the black ring, is this is something that you need to know, and you have to be a little bit, you have to be good in mathematics and criteria, and you have to know how to measure those things. So here we have albums. So your material, musical material, it's on the top there is publiczność, so the audience. So you have to know what is your audience, what kind of people are listening to you, how many people are coming to your gigs, what is the part of the society that is potential, your potential target. Tony is again doing some notes. So your audience, you have to know who are you playing for, because that will also be an important part in building your strategy with a label. On the left, media presence. This is also something that will be checked, looked for, analyzed. Statistics, of course. When I observed Tony's work, I can see that one of the things that he's doing after meeting a band, that he's checking some Spotify statistics and other streaming services. And also, no, it's okay. And live, there's rynek koncertowy, also in the black ring, so it's a live market. So you have to understand also, you know, where are you now? The whole idea of this proposition is to really have the courage to be very honest about yourself. Where are you now? What is your potential? You have to really know how to assess your potential, because if you will not do it, someone else will do it for you. And it's better to have your ownership on that. And the last ring is the ring that everybody loves, the finances. So you have to also be quite concrete, and you have to have a big awareness about what is your financial situation. So what are your possibilities? So your business thinking also have to be here on a certain level. Okay, so this is one thing. And the second thing, this is a different kind of structure that we were working for a long time, because it's quite important. We work in Artists in Bloom a lot on long-term strategies and planning and goal setting. I will not get you through the whole system here. It's quite interesting. Maybe on some other occasion I will explain a little bit more of that, but we will pick some aspects from here to give you some questions to think about, because they're also very, very important. Those are big questions, but it's really worth facing them and confronting them. So at the top of this little structure, there is big, bold future. So one of the questions, or maybe I will, oops, this is not what I wanted to do, to show you all the questions, but if they're all here, let's go with it. So in the center of the structure, you have a band's purpose, which goes with the first question that is here. Why are you doing it? I know it maybe sounds silly. You're a band, you're playing your music. We know some of you, so we know you're active in your region. But this is a very important question that not many artists are posing themselves. And this is some kind of heart, the band's purpose in this structure you have in the middle, because it gives an energy and power to many other important questions and many strategies. So what is your big why? Why are you doing it? Why are you an artist? Why are you putting so much energy in developing your career? That will definitely, naming and phrasing and defining it will can inspire a lot of very practical part of the strategy, and that will really put a direction in your development. Where would you like to be in 3 to 5 years' time? I know this question may be a bit abstract in the current times, but still, imagine that, you know, when you're working with a label, your album is not a 5-month project. Some of the albums live for example, in the main strategy for 2 or 3 years, in many different aspects. So, like, think about, okay, so if you want to release this album, and it's some kind of vehicle for your career and your development, when after 2 or 3 years you would like to be, and on every aspect we named before, your musical career, your network, your audience, your presence, your visibility, your artistic development. This is super important questions that is then a very important feedback and input for the cooperation with the label, because on this information you can build a completely different strategy. And more you know, then the better for your partners, because you have the material to work on. Also, your short-term goals, well, it's a natural consequence. What are your values? This is quite interesting from my point of view. People rarely ask themselves and work on these things, but this is our inner and unconscious motivators. This is what drives us. And I even, not so long ago, I had an interesting work with one artist who was just signing a new deal with independent label in Poland, and asking about these value questions was helping them to build a negotiating strategies, because she named what is really important for her and what she really wants to fight in the in conversation with about the agreement, what she really wants to defend, because this is very connected to her as an artist. What do you want to deliver to your audience, or what internal and external relationships do you want to build in your career in certain time, in 1 year time, 2 year time, 3 year time? So all these questions about your vision, your goals, and also questions connected with your identity, your, let's say, it's a big word, but important word, personal mission as an artist, or all your whys. This is a super, super important material to work on personally, but also with your band and with all your partners. If you will have any more questions later about that, please just keep it for Q&A. We can get back to it. So Label workflow.
So this beautiful building here is in Brussels, and this is PS headquarters in Brussels. Believe it or not, on the top of this roof, there's a place where you can go and have lunch when it's sunny, and also there are beehives on the top of that building. And the bottom bit that where the car's parked is a record shop. It's our PS record shop, and next door to the car, next door to the record shop, is a restaurant as well. The floors, the 2 floors are our offices upstairs, and then downstairs in the basement there's downstairs in the basement there's a venue called Chez PS, and we have regular shows at the venue downstairs as well.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I just maybe I will tell our workshop people why are we talking about all this stuff, because we will just Tony will tell some stuff about how the label works.
We're very proud of our building. So yes, and this is where obviously PS started in Belgium. PS started. It's interesting that it was started by 2 guys. One of them owned a record shop, and the record shop he ran was. He was ardently independent. He would only sell independently released records. So if a record was released by one of the 5 majors, or how many majors there were at that time, there are only 3 now, but he refused to sell them. He would only release records released on independent record labels. Suffice to say, his shop went bust. So what he did with a guy who used to come into the record shop was then start a distribution company, which now is PS. This is what it became. So what we tend to do with as a label when we're talking to artists is
what is maybe important if you are interested in working with a label, you need to get some details. What is for the label and the label workflow important? We kind of work with people we trust and know, which I was saying before with Tensno, that you have a relationship with managers who they manage a number of bands. So we develop the relationships with managers, not always, but you know, they usually come to us with certain artists. So I think you could look at one particular manager who manages Editors, Ghost Poet, Public Service Broadcasting. They are all released by PS. So you can see that if you develop a relationship in that way, you do well with some of their artists, then they will develop. So it can be a good idea to be working with a management company that has got that has a good reputation. And this is often where it starts. We may bring in bands because we work with established managers. Maybe that those artists just walk through the door and they send us something, and that happens on a number of occasions as well. So there's no hard and fast rule, but within the workflow of a label and working with an artist, a manager is quite key to what we do and what we're able to do for those bands. We may say, as soon as a band comes to us, we say, okay, well, you need a manager, and we may find a manager for that particular band. If you could name the most important things that the manager has to represent or have or be that is important in a relationship and good workflow.
The 3 important things that a manager controls their artist.
Controls their artist, okay. I
mean, the world's a little bit different. The world is...
Because, you know, you often say about this relationship with a manager, so maybe we could give some tips about what kind of managers you really like to work with?
Yeah, the world's a little bit different. In Czech and in Poland, for instance, your manager also books your shows, right? You don't have a manager and an agent. So, for instance, a band in the UK will have a manager and will have an agent, even if it's a fairly small band. They will still have a manager and still have an agent. In Czech and Poland, for instance, in Hungary, in smaller territories, it's different. So you can say, okay, your manager is an agent, but I think that a true manager helps develop an artist's career along with a record label. They work in unison with that record label. So this is why the relationship with management is very, very important. And also, if it is a bigger band and you're from another territory, that manager will be active in trying to find that artist an agent to get live shows and et cetera, et cetera. So they're I think, we work with some bands that don't have managers. Actually, some of them are very good. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but I would say that managers are they are key.
Mm-hmm.
Agreements. We call them agreements. We don't call them contracts, because agreements are things that you agree on, whereas contracts sound a little bit more draconian, if you like.
How do you like the picture on the presentation?
Yeah, this isn't a PS picture, by the way. That's not someone in PS.
Okay, be honest. This is how you work. You're men in suits.
I mean, there are a number of agreements that you can do. I mean, with a record label, I mean, we tend to license from the artist, and in that instance, the artist is responsible for delivering pretty much all the asset.
Should I turn?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay. Work on strategy. That's interesting.
I think it's probably the most important thing once a band is signed, this is where a very good record label makes a difference. It's where you sit down with a team of people, with the artist iPads, and management. Yeah, I'm not sure
with iPads.
Yeah, I'm not sure we have
drawings and wall.
We don't have that stuff. We sit in a room, obviously, with a desk and some chairs. We don't make you sit on the floor, that's for sure. But we have it's where people make the difference, where a label makes the difference. The label has the understanding of the market and first-hand experience of the market, obviously. And they'll sit down with the artist. The artist tells, I think, what we do in our office is we usually sit down with the artist. We find out what the story is, where they want to go, what the influences were for the record, how they want to project that into media, and then we create a strategy that will help to put that forward for the artist. And I think this is the most key part of a release. And in my opinion, this is why record labels will always, even if there are a number of options to self-release, this is why record labels will always be essential in releasing records.
So we are coming back to the main question of this workshop. So I hope that these case studies and analyzing other options was some kind of a tip for you, and also sharing with you some insights from PS workflow, and in general it applies to many label workflows. So that was some kind of tips for you. To answer the question, what do you need to be label ready? But before we will give you ready-made answers, we are very, very curious what are your conclusions from what we said for this moment. So let's do a little brainstorming. I'm wondering what is on the next slide, but I'm afraid that on the next slide that there are answers.
You can find out here though, can't you?
No, it will be visible.
Yeah, no, you can't go
Okay,
there.
So we can go there.
You can't go to the next slide.
So let's do a little brainstorming. We are very curious, what are your ideas, suggestions, conclusions? What do you think you need to be label ready? Chat is yours. Please share with us. What do you think are the crucial aspects? What do you have to have in all these areas that we mentioned to be label ready, to be an interesting partner for the label?
Ooh.
We have one question on chat, but we will answer the questions at the end, like we mentioned before.
Yeah, but he might have come later.
Yeah. So what do you think?
So tell us what you believe you have to have before you go and sit down with your favorite record label. I was in a band, my favorite record label was Virgin. That's why we signed to Virgin.
Oh, I love this triangle. A perfect stuff, which means, but the perfect stuff is like music, plus vision, plus strategy, maybe.
So music, vision, and strategy.
Not music, a perfect stuff. Okay. I will be reading, because some of you are watching us on Facebook.
Tour portfolio, interesting.
I think I need stronger visuals, a strong plan to get people interested before hearing music. Also, maybe a bit more clear production.
Mm-hmm.
Tour portfolio.
Banger, I like the banger.
Banger. Knowledge, why, balls, and commitment.
Balls, yeah,
No,
balls.
knowledge, why, balls, and commitment.
Okay.
Significant high numbers on Spotify and other social platforms. Banger with double smile.
Banger's good, I like banger.
Clear and better music production. I don't know why is it in brackets. That's interesting.
Good songs, vision, something to blow people away. For example, great shows.
Know who you are, know what you want, have some basic background, I suppose, like social media, YouTube, etc., and some good recordings. Audio, video would help. Have some kind of fan base and experience with live gigs. Unique, artistic style, good music, ready, good music ready, content ready. What kind of content you mean? What kind of content?
That might be music, videos, or whatever, right?
No, but I'm asking the person who wrote that.
Oh. A van. Identity, trustworthiness, dedication, a van.
Good musical material, self-confidence. Hello, that's important. I agree. Plan for the future and product which will interest people. It's interesting you wrote a product.
Any more?
That's interesting because we missed that, but I think it's an interesting point because Michaelo wrote ready mixed master material. I think this is interesting. We can get back to it. Website, a clear music identity. Also friends, I guess. Also content, more music materials, content for social media, also knowledge of Czech language, living in Prague, also friends, I guess. This is the full answer. Anything more? I will check, by the way. Wow, 77. Okay, thank you guys very much. I think we
Anything
are
else? Right.
yeah.
Good. Okay, these. I mean, list isn't comprehensive. I did this list like maybe 10 minutes before we started or whatever, and so we were talking about what we thought you would come up with. No one said finance, I think, because if you're gonna, for instance, one person was saying ready, mastered. I guess you're going to have to have paid to make that record, to master it, and etc. etc. So finance is probably going to be fairly important, especially if you're going to take a ready-made record and you're going to give it to a label and say, here you go. So not necessarily, and you know, there are a number of occasions where people just turn up with demos, and sometimes they're really rough. What a label's job is often is to actually be able to see through all the roughness of a demo and imagine what it's going to be like at you know, at the other end, at the other, you know, when it's ready to release. So that's a knack of the person who has to listen to the music. So you can deliver demos, you can explain that they're not demos, they're not, you know, it's not perfectly mixed, it's not mastered, etc., etc., and the label can still, you know, listen to it. But I think it was interesting that a lot of people said stats.
Yeah, and content.
Content is important. That I think all these things, stats, content, live, all these things develop a picture. They develop a story of the relevance of that artist, that band within the market, the current marketplace. And that's very important. It's, you know, we do, rightly or wrongly, we do look at stats, and we do look at if someone has already got something out and they've self-released it on Spotify or whatever, we do go and look at how many monthly listeners there are. We do look at what's top 5 cities are, you know, etc., etc. What's their most streamed track, and so on and so on. We do those things. I think there are occasions where you sign artists that you don't need to look at those things. You just think, wait a minute, the music's so good that and that's first and foremost. You listen to what has been sent to you. We recently signed an artist that delivered they'd released 2 records before. They delivered a new record, and it was very, very good. And I wasn't so concerned about stats on the previous two records, for instance.
Mika wrote, the usual case is that the labels don't accept solicited material. So I went to the other end of a complete production. Where are you from? Can you remind us where are you from? From what country? Because that, I think it's also important. Greece. Because I mean, it doesn't apply to Polish market, right? That you have to have a perfect material, and most of the artists, at least that I know, I work with, and stories I know very well, didn't have a ready-made material when they started a relationship with a label. And like Tony said, like, this is one of the reasons why label exists, to help you with the material.
I mentioned as well earlier that the person who wrote Banger, I mean, Banger obviously is we used to use this term for a great track. It used to be like a club, you know, it's like an anthem. It's a banging record, and it's true. You have to have something that really stands out, that really is strong. I think that music always comes first and foremost. Club Banger. So music comes first and foremost, without a question. I'm definitely I don't know if other people do, but I definitely don't sign bands because I go, oh, it's got 2 million monthly listeners or some, I don't know, or whatever. And then it doesn't fit us as an artist, because I think that would be it would be a disastrous thing to do. The relationship probably wouldn't go particularly well.
Yeah.
But I think that, a lot of what people wrote here, music, vision, strategy, touring history, strong visuals, banger being good music, I would translate that as commitment is very, very important. I think Ball's attitude is really important as well. We're a record label, in my opinion, that we like people with attitude, because attitude is, you can use that attitude to develop a fan base. You use a life history to develop fan bases, etc., etc. And all these things are really important. And then high stats people mentioned as well.
If I can also add something to the music and bangers. Remember that the people from labels are really big music fans, so they listened to so many things through decades. So it's important to not only develop your own music, but develop also the awareness of the music, of the trends, of all these correspondence and references that your music has with what happened and what is happening right now, because those people listen to this, and sometimes they, even if your music is great, this is not enough great because they already heard that somewhere. So that's why you also need to really work on your music and look for your unique style, even if you are, corresponding with some kind of genre or something that already happened in the music.
Yeah,
musically.
I mean, it's interesting that obviously for a few years, I was always asked a question by people about when will there be a Polish band that's big outside of Poland. This was a general thing that everybody, and then you would sit there and say, well, actually there are lots of Polish bands that are already big outside of Poland. There might be Behemoth, there might be Vader, there might be Ties from Nebula. In more recent times, Hania Rani is making a mark outside of Poland. So, but the interesting thing about those bands or artists that I've just mentioned is that they work within a genre of music, but what they're doing within the genre of music is different. It's there is a uniqueness to what they do. You could say that Behemoth created a particular type of black metal. You could say Ties from Nebula create a particular type of post-rock metal. So they work within a genre, but within that, Riverside is another good example where they're making progressive rock, but it's not your standard progressive rock. It's different within that scene. And this is what has set them apart, and this is what has made those scenes notice them, and that's why they've become bigger and bigger within those scenes. And a number of those bands now sell more records outside of Poland. They still would chart top 10 in Poland with albums, but they sell far more records outside of Poland than they do inside. And really, because what they do, there's a uniqueness to what they do within a genre. And I think that is very, very important. It's something that you may not be able to sit down and create, as in your, might not sit down and go, guys, we need to be, more like this. But it's something that has happened for them. But
we on a few slides before, on one of these infographics, you could find unique value proposition, UVP. It's a business term, but I think it's very good. And if anybody would be interested, we were working some time ago around unique value propositions within artists' work. And I can send you some like some questions that can help you also to work around unique value proposition. Because if you still don't know where is this, and you have to be quite honest about it, because sometimes bands think that they're really great and they're original, but you have to here also be very realistic, and you have to have your feet on the ground, like really no, you have to know the situation. So if anybody would be interested in unique value propositions exercises, you can write to me at the end of the presentation. We'll show you the email, so I can send you some tips how to work around that also, because this is also a process of exploration and discovering your artistic identity.
Should we do we want to go to Greg? Do we want to answer this guy? I think it's yes. We can say yes.
Should I read it?
Libor, we can say yes, I think.
Maybe I will read it to Facebook people. Hi, I'm not sure if Libor Soundcheck
I think we can leave it to the end of the workshop.
Okay. But in fact, we're
going to Q&A, right, aren't we?
No, oh no, we have to check your level of awareness. So,
do we give marks now?
No.
Oh, come on.
Everybody 10. Do you want to ask the question to people?
What are, I can't read the question because everything's in the way. What are the release options? Yes, my awareness of the topic is on what level?
So you can again say plus, like comparing to the beginning of the workshop, what is now, are you +1, +2, +3? After all we went till that moment went through.
12.
Wow!
12 out of 10.
How upky. That's really cool. You are out of the range.
It's you should have put 11. It would have been like Spinal Tap.
Okay, +3, +2. No, maybe we should ask them what, because we don't know what is +2, but maybe they should say where they are.
Yeah, but plus means that it's going up. I think that's good. I think if they were saying -2, I think it would be a problem, right, guys?
Very simple way of.
So you're ultimately, I think people's knowledge would appear to have got better, which you would hope was the case. Otherwise, we're not doing a very good job.
So now, I would say from 1 to 5. Yeah, that's very clear. Cool. Congrats.
Yeah. So he's
Okay. So that would, I know maybe that's more clear answer, I would say, from which
so
point you were.
If you were 2 before, what are you now? So if you say 2, you would like Dominic says, he says that he was 1 at the start and now he's 5. So if you can put, I was 6 and now I'm 8, or whatever it is. Can you do that? Is that possible? Is it too confusing?
Waiting for the answers on the
like,
chat.
Oh, I was 4. I'm now 6. Good. 7.5 to 8.5 specific. I was 8 and now I'm 8 to 9.
I was 5 and
now I'm
9.
7 to 9. Good. Plus. It's totally, that must mean
10. That must mean
yeah.
10 now. It's our favorite band. I Love You, Honey Bunny. Maybe I shouldn't say
he
that.
Was Mr. Honey Bunny was 8 before.
Maybe we shouldn't say that Honey Bunny is our favorite band, to not express preferences to workshop audience. Okay, guys, thank you very much. But happily, this is not it with your growing awareness of leasing options, because now we will go, like we promised, to Q&A, and we can try to cover the questions that were not covered yet. That will help you, Q&A, to get some more information. I propose I think that may be quite helpful. Oh, sorry. If we would switch and we would use this part of the application Q&A, I hope you can see it, because when we will switch here, we will not miss any of the questions. So I'm leaving the chat for a moment, but I don't know why I cannot see Q&A. It's not opening.
There are things in there though.
I don't know why it's not.
Chat, what's that there?
No, this is chat. But I'm trying to click Q&A, and I should have.
Wait.
Or we can just let them speak the old way as in a normal Zoom meeting.
You mean talk to us? That's
yeah.
Weird. Wow.
Sure.
Wow, it's like a telephone call.
Telephone.
Yes.
Okay, guys, you can speak to us. I think you can tell us, ask us questions by speaking to us.
But first, you have to raise your hand.
Unfortunately, you know, I don't, because I should see it also. Maybe I will turn on the participants.
Yeah.
So we have a first question from Marley.
Yeah, you're listening.
He's up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can speak.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
We do now, yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Hello, Marley.
So first of all, thanks for all the information. What I was wondering is, you know, for someone who would search, let's say for a manager or for a label or even for a booker, what is the most important information and how to give it to them, you know, like, because some might be bothered by an attachment or things like this, but also it's kind of important to give them something visual. So what would you think is the best way to like show what you have to a manager, a label, a booker?
I mean, I think it's the information you're showing is obviously the important thing. So if it's a manager and a booker, I think it's going to be your live shows, obviously. So your live history, and maybe they want to see what you're like live. And that would mean that you would want to, you know, obviously these days you can embed video into a MailChimp or something like that, although you want to make it more personal than it just being MailChimp, but you can embed video and it can be quite light. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a heavyweight file or anything. And that's what I would do. I would, if it's for something where you think I want to get someone involved in booking my shows, then you need to show them what your shows are like, what your history of the shows has been, what countries you've played in, you know, what venues you're playing in, audience numbers, etc., all those sort of things. And that's what I do. But I would do it via mail and embed a performance into the mail and then give them, you know, the information. Don't make it too long-winded, and make sure that they're getting to see what they want to see as soon as possible in that email. Because that's the thing that entices them then to be able to think, actually, this is quite good. I'll go and look at something else. You know, I'll do a bit more research here.
I also can add something here, because my friend, international manager from Netherlands, I don't know, maybe it was 1 year ago or 2 years ago, he mentioned that in the email, when you have a foot in the email, he, instead of putting the website, he put the 1-minute video link to the live shows of their band that they were managed and developing internationally. And he said that like the rate of how many times these materials are seen, thanks to this putting this little little link into the foot of the email, the effect was amazing. So, and it's very important to, in the first minute and not even more, put like really the greatest material, not wait till, you know, nobody wants to wait 5 minutes till it will develop. So you need to think also about the timing. So even if you're, for example, meeting people, professionals on showcases, and you present yourself, try to be really quick, smart, and give the you know, coherent information quickly. I often, when I speak with the bands, maybe I'm not the person that they would fight for because I'm not a manager, I'm not a booker, but sometimes I can hear how they are presenting themselves, how they are pitching themselves, and it takes really long time, a lot of introduction, and it's really difficult to get the information all together. So even in this kind of situations, you have to be quite sharp, because those people get a lot of emails every day. So the you know, compressing it is very important.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Anyone else for questions?
Questions.
We don't bite.
Please raise your hand.
It's like in school.
Obviously not to the camera, but in the...
Do we know how many people are on Facebook? Can we answer some questions on Facebook too?
Unfortunately, we can't, because there was some Zoom streaming server issue. So we are not streaming on Facebook, but we will put the recording of it.
Right.
So I'm sure there will be some questions afterwards, after we release it.
Okay.
Come on, guys! This is your moment. This is your moment to really participate. Oh, there's another one. Oh, there was one. Is there still one?
No, I don't see any hands.
No, there was a hand, and then it went again.
Don't be shy. Really,
we don't bite. There's one.
Or if you can find it, just write us in the chat that I want to speak, and I'll turn you on.
There's one there now, I think, with the hand raised. Yes.
Anna Bierkan.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi. I just wondered when it's a good timing to contact a label. Is it not already, or?
You know, this is a very good question, because you know, there's like there is even a strategy for when is the right time to speak to a record label, where, you know, what point are you at in your career? How far have you got with recording a record? Have you had records out before, etc., etc.? All these things are quite important. Personally, it's, you know, it's best, I think, to actually be speaking to a label when you've got material. I mean, it's quite, sometimes bands do get in touch and they say, I recorded 3 albums before and I released them before, and I'm thinking about making a new record. Well, you know, thinking about making a new record isn't, you know, actually begin to make a new record, have some demos. And I think then you know what, because a label can't envision what a new record is going to sound like. Even if you had 2 records before, you can't envisage whether what that record is going to sound like at all. So I think it's important to have some songs, doesn't matter whether they're demos, and it has to be at a point, maybe, you know, we ask our artists to deliver a finished master 6 months before we release a record. So it's fairly early. It doesn't always work out that way. admittedly. Sometimes we might get a finished record 3 months before, but we ask for it as early as possible.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So anyone else? Yes, Dominic.
Please.
Hi, Dominic.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just maybe add to that last question. What about your own experience or the band's experience? Like, I don't know, is it best to have, let's say, years of experience with live gigs, having some good quality YouTube videos and stuff? I know you don't have to have a record or an album, as you just said. You can have just demos, but I suppose it's also good to have kind of like the band working for some time. Like in our case, with my band, we've been playing for, I'd say maybe 7 or 8 years, but we've only been playing around my town mostly. You know, we went once to Austria, but it's most, except for a few cases in Prague, it's mostly around České Budějovice. So I'm wondering, you know, we've been playing for a long time, but I still feel like we're kind of just at the very beginning. We don't even have our own album. We have a couple of demos. We're just working on making the video here, make, you know, from our live shows. So how far does the band have to be in, you know, in this sense, you know, if you understand what I mean?
Generally, I think you have to tell a story. It is important to tell a story, but I think there are exceptions to the rules, because I was in a band and we got signed to Virgin and we never played live.
Okay.
We'd never done a show, and in actual fact, when we told them we never played live, they were completely shocked. But I think that nowadays you have to tell a story. You know, if you are in a band and that band it's important that that band works live, then I think the label will be ultimately looking at that. They want to see the band live because that's an area where they can develop that band. So, you know, there's no hard and fast rule, but I think it is important to tell as big a story as possible these days, whether that be YouTube stats or whether, you know, you've got something out on Spotify already and these sort of, whether it's, you know, Facebook followers, you know, likes and et cetera, these things all paint a picture about what the perception of that band is and what fan base you're communicating with it now, and what the label then is able to work with as they help develop you as an artist. So I think these days, the more you can tell people at the start, the better position you're in.
Okay.
And also, if I can add something here, remember that the label, this is their, this is what they do, and what they love to do is to help the artist to develop. So if someone is just ready, it also changed the you know, ready, defined with the strategy, best materials and idea. They are not so sometimes interesting for the label, but also the situation changes for the artist, because if the artist has a well-developed situation, like for example Bowska, then her attitude to the proposition from the label changes. You know, she has bigger expectations from the label. Okay, I did it all, and I put so much money and my creativity to build this. So what do you have to, you know, propose to me? So this is, you know, this changing the position or the status or the awareness, preparation of the artist change the whole situation.
But I would look at it in a different way. If I was to develop, if a band that was developed came to me, I would be pleased that that band, one, it says something about you as a record label, because the band that's developed is coming to you. So there's something in that way. It's a band that you can work with. but importantly, that band brings you something that's ready-made, that you know that pretty much is, there's no guarantees, but pretty much it's a guarantee that that band is already established and you're going to do well with that band. Doing well with that band helps me do well with bands that aren't so developed. And that is really important for a record label. There are two things that you can further an established artist's career and continue that artist to develop. But at the other end, you can also further an artist's career that has just started. And often that's what people look at more than the developed artists. So it's important just as much for labels to be taking an artist that isn't the finished article, but then helping it develop into a finished article. That is important. And established artists allow us to be able to do that often.
So kind of like give the label a picture of who you are, like just so they know, like, okay, I've played so many gigs in the past couple of years. This is what my music sounds like. This is what my live shows look like, and this is where I'm used to playing, and this is kind of the audience that comes to my gigs. Gives the label kind of a picture of what you're like, who you actually are, so they have something to start with.
Yeah, and I think the world has changed a little bit. A&R doesn't work in the same way as it used to. I mean, many years ago, the only way you could find out about a band was by turning up to their shows and seeing them play live. This was, this is how people knew about bands. It's how record labels sign bands. I think now there are so many different ways of finding out about bands, whether it be on YouTube or online or whatever it is. It's rare that you go to a show and say, I mean, maybe this is why there are showcases. It's rare that you go to a show and walk out and they're going, I've never heard of that band before, but I want to sign them. It's very rare these days.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Dominic.
So we have another question from you.
Yeah. Hi.
Yuri,
you have to turn on your microphone.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now, please?
Yeah.
Yes,
There you go.
hi.
Okay. So I thank you very much for this session, really. And actually, I have so many questions, but maybe in my head first. But the one question I have for you now is a question. I wrote it in QA actually, but I can repeat it. What is your suggestion towards the digital distributors in terms of a quality of recorded material? So what I mean is, I'm a pianist, so I can make my own example. I can record myself with my mics, and even, for example, in Pro Tools, I can make some post-production, and I can put it online on SoundCloud, or Bandcamp, and so on. And then when I want to spread it outside more to get more people, I can contact some digital distributor like, I don't know, DistroKid or CD Baby, and so on. But there is also the option to turn to recording studio and invest some or maybe fundamental money for my own recordings. I mean, having my tracks professionally recorded. So when or what is the difference? I mean, my tracks on Spotify recorded by myself and recorded on studio. I think it has there has to be some value in difference in terms of this, right?
Yeah, I would ask you a question.
Yes.
Hi. Are you happy with what you record on your own?
No.
Technically,
not really, because I know
that answers your question.
Okay.
As an artist, I think that you have to be happy with the work you produce. And often, you know, I sit down with artists and I speak to them, and they won't even let me listen to things that they're not happy with. They will get that record happy, let alone letting a fan base listen to it or the general public listen to it. They won't even let that record label listen to it. So I think if you're not happy with it as an artist, then I think that answers your question. You believe that you can sonically, you can do better, and you could then go and record. Does it make a difference when you listen to something on Spotify or Apple or Tidal or whatever it is? Tidal has hi-fi. I don't know if it does, and I think that there are a lot of artists that even when they're happy with their sound, they're not sonically perfect, because that's what they, you know, you couldn't say that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard are sonically perfect, for instance. You know, so it first and foremost, this is why I asked you the question. First and foremost, it's a question that the artist should be asking themselves.
Yes, because well, I am satisfied with my own recording, because I know that at home I can't do that better. But at the same time, I know that in the real recording studio, the sound can be amplified to much more tunes. So this is my question, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, but actually, you have perfectly answered my question. Thank you.
Good. Good. Thank you.
So we have another question
one more.
from Halupski.
Where are you from, Halupski?
He needs to turn his microphone.
Yeah, I already did.
Where are you from?
Hey, I'm from the Czech Republic actually, but I picked Polish name just to be interesting.
Oh.
No, just because I love Chopin. Now, my question, we already touched the topic a little bit. It was about the demos for the labels. So let's say someone, an artist picks a dream label that is really like a dream label, and they don't accept demos. Like this experience came to me so often that you just like, yeah, I seen a label and I know that my favorite artists are there and all this kind of stuff, and then I see they don't. I'm sorry.
In Czech,
No. There are German labels from the UK and other, and obviously they are not accepting demos for a reason. And so I just want to ask if you have an experience with this, and how would you like, what would be your tip to how to do this?
First selection, because there are so many
bands. I think I guess that labels that don't accept, I mean, we accept demos. It's part and parcel of what we do, and if people send us links or whatever they send us, it may sound strange, but everybody who sends us something gets a reply. It's one of our hard and fast rules. If people don't get replies, then you know, we find out why they didn't get a reply. So it's interesting that sometimes I think with maybe labels that don't accept demos probably think that they have a network of a way of signing artists so they don't need unsolicited demos sent to them. I've always found it quite peculiar that labels don't, that when there are labels that do that, in my opinion, because you never know. I mean, you know, it's like cutting off one of your arms. You know, it's like saying, I don't need this source of new music. So it's pointless, but yeah, I don't understand it. So if I came across that, I would just find a label that interests me, that does find that does accept demos, and then it's the loss of the label that doesn't. Effectively, it's
you know. But I know it's a little bit on the about different thing, but I want to underline what you said about the dream label. I think this is, I'm happy that you brought it up because it's very important to have a dream label. Every year I work with Hungarian Music Export Office on a mentoring camp for artists that takes place in August for 3 days, and we work with and a few months before artists from Europe apply, so we work internationally with the bands from Europe and with mentors from Europe. And last year there was a question from Andras from Festival Ment that you probably well known.
Yes.
Just pick some people and ask in what label you would like to be in, or where would you like, on what kind of festival you would like to play. And the answer was, you know, people were a bit shocked and they were answering, well, I would like to be in a label that will say yes to my music. And like, it was that answer. Like, you really need to know what is your dream label, because it shows the level also of your awareness, because you pick the label because you know what they are releasing, you know, you understand the mode of working of the label, their style, their identity, their approach to the artist and to the market. So this is a very cool thing that you just brought up, you know, to get a different answer. So really your choice, where are you heading, is so important, and where.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure. We have one more. Who's it? Who's that?
Ivan.
We have, yeah.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the session, guys. I would have a question on you, Tony, as an experienced A&R. Are you kind of A&R or not?
I've done a lot of things in my time, and people have called me a lot of things, but they never called me A&R. No, no, I think I do A&R now.
Okay.
But it wasn't something that I started in the industry as doing. My real expertise in the industry has been sales and marketing. But now, as a general manager of the PS office in Poland and Eastern Europe, I do A&R. So the artists we sign in Poland, I've signed.
Okay, but this is not the main question. Main question follows now. What is honestly, except for music, the real thing which is interesting for the A&Rs from labels? What is it except for music? Because, you know, many guys, many music producers can do great music, but they don't have any social background, any live shows, any experience, but their music is really good.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that this is not the main point sometimes. What next is a must for a potential artist for a label to have?
It always starts with music, but then I think there are a number of questions that you ask yourself. One, is it relevant is that music, that it could be great music, but it might not be relevant in your main market, for instance. So is it relevant in your main market? Is it something, if it is it something that you could, that you can promote and market it to the best of your abilities as a label? Interestingly, often when we sign a band, it's not a dictator process. It's also a democratic process. It's, you know, I might think, hang on a minute, I really want to sign this artist, but then there are a number of people that I will go to and just say, guys, what do you think about this? I won't tell them what I think about the record. I will ask the music. I will ask them what they think. So there's a process you go through, and all those people add something along the way. You know, a person who does who is head of digital or a person who's head of PR will be able to tell you from their expertise whether, yes, we can get interviews we can get exposure, we will get radio at this place and this place and this place. Now, I know that roughly, but they know because that's what their expertise are. So there are a number of things that you have to go through. I don't think it's like it's about there's one thing. There are a number of things. It's not ticking a one box. If there is no socials, but it's relevant to the market and you think you can get media, then you'll develop the social aspect of what the artist needs and etc. You'll slowly develop a fan base. So having fast rules, I don't think there are. I think that it's dependent on the music the particular music that you're listening to. Because if we had almost like a checklist, then we probably wouldn't sign anything.
Okay. So because sometimes it is really difficult to create some fan base. So to say, from my point of view, I take social networks like Facebook and so on as a very disturbing factor. So it sometimes I feel that it is more demanding than music itself, than creating music. So I believe that very important. Yeah, go on.
Well, Magda said, "Welcome to the modern world." I think it is a way that the industry has changed. I mean, I think in the old days you used to have a gut instinct that told you what you thought about a band and whether it would work, and even to the extent of when you were releasing a record, you felt it. You felt if it was working, whether it was the right time. Did you need to put the record back? Did you, whatever it was, you had a gut instinct for it. Now we do, admittedly, look at stats and we decide whether the album is at the optimal moment to release or it's not, etc., etc. So socials, listeners on Spotify, etc. These things are important, and it probably is that if I hear a band and I really like that band, I can tell you that the next thing I will do is I will look at how many followers they've got on Facebook and how many monthly listeners they've got on Spotify. There's no question that's what I'll do. But if the stats are low, it doesn't mean that I won't be interested in signing that band. Because the music may be exceptional. I might not have signed 10th Snow if I looked at the stats and said, oh, they've only got 2,000 people on Facebook. I wouldn't have signed them. But the music was so good, I didn't care about the 2,000 people on Facebook. Now they've got, 10,000.
Okay. Fine. Thank you for answering my questions.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I just, one thing came up also to me that I know many artists, especially I remember the situation when I was working with jazz musicians who are, they are super extreme in this attitude that why we need to do the marketing thing and the music should, defend by itself, etc., etc. My advice here is to look at social media as a different medium, as a part of the storytelling process. So it's not something that is that has to be addition or an destructor for your music. It can be a different coherent channel for your music to really go on and develop further. It's like we call it transmedia storytelling. So what's the story underneath can go all through coherently through all the channels. So that sometimes is a relief when it's too disturbing. I think we will be wrapping up a little bit.
We have to go for tea.
and to take care of the little, that is
the little one.
The little one. So thank you very much, guys. It was really great to be with you for these 2 hours. We know that you moved a little bit on the scale, so that's a relief. We are happy that we helped you to go through the label readiness. And thank you for your questions, for your time. And
thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I actually quite enjoyed it. So, and it was down to you people asking questions and actually telling us that you had learned something from what we're doing, which is a good thing. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And have a great evening, and see you soon somewhere.
Bye-bye.
And we will be again free for traveling. Bye-bye. Thank you.
I guess.